Hello everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy and welcome back to Stonesy Reads. This shouldn't be too long of an episode. It's only 18 pages unless my dogs decide to go ape shit because I am recording later in the day, which is my fault. But hey, that's okay. Yep, we should be able to begin. Gotta think. Recording setup, light is on. What am I missing? Oh, a sip of my water. And I have to wait till it's 40 seconds to start. Sorry. Alright. And let's begin with Chapter 20, The New Zoo. The deal that Farnham had made with Crichton had turned out even better than he could possibly hoped. The two of them had met in the Nether several times since, and the animals that the Piglin had brought for him had all been amazing. Farnham didn't like to keep the obsidian portal open all the time, so he ignited it every evening to see if Crichton had brought him something new. If not, he shut it down and tried again the next day. Most days Crichton wasn't there, but when they were, Farnham always had plenty of obsidian ready to trade with them. One of the first things Crichton had found for Farnham was the Lewistic axolotl, just like the one he'd been chasing when he first met. In fact, he wasn't at all sure if it wasn't the exact same creature. The Piglin could easily have gone back from the Nether into the cavern and captured it, assuming the rare axolotl had still been living there, of course. But then Crichton had brought him all kind of other things too. The most interesting of the fears so far was a creature called a hoglin. It looked a lot like a pig, but it had a fan of fur sticking up from its spine and a pair of tusks jutting from its mouth. Was a lot meaner. Farnham had taken care of pigs before, even had them in his zoo, but he had a hard time getting the hoglin to stop attacking him, even though he lined the enclosures for all the nether mobs and netherrack to help them feel more at home. Fortunately, he and his friends had been prepared for this, and Grinchard had reminded Farnham that all sorts of dangerous creatures lived in the Nether, so they would be prepared if Crichton brought home one of them to the zoo. To that end, they built a number of reinforcement habitats that could keep even the meanest creatures captive. After all, Farnham had such vicious beasts breaking loose and terrorizing the town. If that happened, they'd have to kill the offending creature, and to Farnham that was entirely opposite of the whole point of having a zoo. The place was meant to show people all sorts of amazing animals, and to keep them safe from the people and people safe from them. The first time Crichton brought a hoglin, though, from the Nether, Farnham was excited as he could be. The creature fired his imagination and set him wondering how many different kinds of stunning beasts they might be able to introduce to the zoo. Unfortunately, the hoglin didn't do well in the overworld. While the strider had been perfectly fine once it got warmed up, the hoglin reacted to the world much more like a piglin did, like it had been poisoned. Farnham supposed he should have spotted that before Crichton had left the mob with him, but he'd been too excited in the moment to notice. Farnham had wanted to hustle the hoglin back to the Nether before he became too sick, but the beast attacked him any time he got close to it. It hasn't been able to get close enough to pick it up and hustle it away before it died. That had been sad enough for Farnham. He'd fallen to his knees and cried over the poor animals, which hadn't done anything but deserve such a horrible fate. And then the dead animal stood up and attacked him again. The transformation from a hoglin to zoglin, a zombified hoglin, shook Farnham so hard he almost didn't escape. The zoglin took a large bite out of his leg he was climbing out of his pen, and he had made Micro patch him up. While Farnham lay there on the other side of the fence, injured and watching the zoglin throwing itself against the fence as it kept trying to get at him in dead ferocity, he said, "Maybe this isn't the kind of animal that belongs in a zoo." Grinchard laughed at that, trying to put their friend at ease. "Are you kidding? It's perfect. It's already dead, so you don't have to worry about killing it. And you don't have to feed it anything either. Just make sure it doesn't take another bite out of you," Micro said as he pounded Farnham's wound. Farnham had just glad that Micro was talking to him. They'd had a bit of an argument over her diamond pickaxe and had led to her avoiding him a lot of the time. To be fair, it was less an argument, more of Farnham pleading for Micro to give up her diamond pickaxe and her saying, "No, it's mine," she said, "not yours, mine, and I need it for my job." "Can't you just make another one? They don't seem all that complicated." Micro scoffed at him. "Making one is easy enough. Finding the material you need to make one is the tricky part. Diamonds are rare and expensive. A pickaxe like that is even rarer." Farnham had known that she'd quite a deal with Crichton, but he figured that he could talk to Micro, seeing it his way. So far, he had not any luck on the count. "But I need for the zoo. I promised Crichton I'd get him one. Just keep giving him the obsidian, which they want so badly. Also, for who knows what reason, you already have the source for that right here in the zoo. They seem happy enough with it. Eventually, they're going to be tired of all that and want a diamond pickaxe. Why not just trade them one right now?" Micro rolled the eyes with him. "For one, it's not yours. For two, you should hold out a bit. They just started bringing you animals. You really want to give them everything, then just hope they keep coming back with new creatures for you? I trust them. We made a deal." Micro gave Farnham a sad shake of her head. That's sweet. I suppose that's one of the reasons I like you so much. But you really shouldn't trust people you don't know that well. Yet, Farnham added. I don't know them that well yet, but we're getting to know each other better all the time. And so far, they've held up their end of the bargain. I just want to make sure I can hold up mine too. Then you better start saving up for a diamond pickaxe for your own and give it to them. That had put an end to the conversation then, but Farnham was already looking for an excuse to restart it. He just didn't want to do so while Micro was taking care of his leg. For the meantime, Crichton seemed to be fine with accepting as much obsidian as Farnham could make for them, and they continued bringing them all sorts of new animals. After the incident of the Zoglin, Crichton showed up with a fresh Hoglin. Hostile, but still alive at least. I don't think I can accept this one, Farnham said. It's not that I don't want to have such a wonderful creature in my zoo, but I just don't want another one of them to die on me. If I can't take care of it, I'd rather it went free. The explanation was more for his friends who were listening to him than for Crichton, who couldn't understand a word of it. Then the piglin gave him a confused grunt, and he pointed a new Hoglin over at the Zoglin and gave Crichton an emphatic shake of his head. The Crichton understood this and disappeared back into the nether with the Hoglin. The next day, though, Crichton returned with the same Hoglin in tow and a chest filled with old bottles. Then they presented the Hoglin to Farnham. Crichton uncorked one of the bottles, which was filled with an odd liquid that smelled like old dust. Then Crichton fed the contents of the bottle to a Hoglin and slurped up in an instant. Afterward, Crichton hung around for several minutes to observe the Hoglin. The creature seemed absolutely fine. Clearly delighted, Crichton offered both Hoglin and the bottle to Farnham with a humongous smile. I just have to feed it some of this? Farnham held the bottle up in front of him. Crichton nodded vigorously. Farnham tried to ask the piglin how often he needed to give the Hoglin medicine, but he couldn't work out a way to manage it. He wondered if time in the nether ran differently than in an overworld, but he supposed it really didn't matter. He and his friends would have kept an eye on the Hoglin and give it the medicine whenever it started to look like it was feeling ill. They figured out a schedule for it eventually. Most of the other animals that Crichton brought to the zoo, thankfully, didn't require as much maintenance. The only trouble was building enclosure for them fast enough to accommodate them all. But Micro and Grinchard pinched in with what Farnham knew, and he wouldn't be able to manage such incredible expansion without them. One night, while the three of them were relaxing after a long day's work, Farnham offered up a toast. I just want to thank you all for everything you've done for me and my zoo. Without you, I'd probably be clapped somewhere under a feeding trough. Or maybe the Zoglin would be feeding on you, Grinchard cracked. Farnham's leg had healed just fine, but the memory of what had struck him, it served as an object lesson that couldn't be too careful around wild animals, especially ones from the nether. Yet another reason that you all deserve my thanks. It would be our best interest, Micro, if you got turned into a zombie yourself. I am sure you would be trying to eat us forever. It's okay, though, Grinchard said. We'd sure be put in one of the zoo's cages, too. Watch after you for all eternity. Farnham cackled at that. Always said the zoo is my life. I just wasn't planning beyond being in my death, too. Later that evening, Farnham and the others gathered near the obsidian portal at the back of the zoo, and he would ignite it like he normally did. Activated just as usual, and the purple field swirling through it. When Crichton had something to trade, they often bounded right through at the point, hauling something wriggling with them that could bring a huge smile to Farnham's face. This time, nothing appeared, at least not at first. Micro clapped Farnham on the back. Well, try again tomorrow. It's been a while, Farnham gazed at the portal, worried. Do you think anything might have happened to Crichton? Well, it can't be easy trying to gather all those beasties for the zoo, Grinchard said. Maybe they caught the wrong end of one of them. Micro scoffed. That horrible thing to say. Now he's going to worry all night. He turned to Farnham. I'm sure they're fine. They're probably just looking for something really special for you now. They really brought you all those easy animals. It takes a while to get the tougher ones, I'm sure. Farnham sucked at his teeth. He wasn't sure what to do. He couldn't really go hunting for Crichton in the nether. It was far too dangerous to be there for long. And anyhow, it was a deal he'd made with the piglin. They provided the animals, and he provided the obsidian. You just have to wait until tomorrow. If we don't hear from them soon, we'll have to go and have a look around for them, he said. But not tonight. The others nodded in solemn agreement. Just as Farnham was about to give up entirely, shut down the obsidian portal for the night, a purple field flickered. Farnham's hopes rose like a rocket. He couldn't wait to see what Crichton had brought him for him this time. But it wasn't Crichton who came through the portal. Instead, it was the biggest piglin he had ever seen, and a legion of well-armed piglins following in the massive brute's wake. Chapter 21. Wanton Destruction. It's a whole army of piglins, Grinchard shouted at the top of their lungs as they drew their sword and steeled themselves for a battle. We need to shut the portal down now. Micro grew her sword too, and was ready to fight. Farnham cursed himself for not bothering to bring his own blade along that night. He'd come to trust Crichton, so he never armed when he went to meet him. He always figured that if something went wrong during one of their trading sessions, he and the others would just place him with the diminutive piglin back through the obsidian portal and shut it down behind them, permanently if necessary. He had never imagined that other piglins could come snarling through the portal instead of Crichton, nor would they have twice the piglin's size. It's too late, Micro shouted as he backed away from the horde of piglins rushing through the portal. There's too many of them already. Farnham hoped that his friend was wrong, but he didn't see how. A dozen large, ferocious piglin warriors had already stormed into the zoo and blocking off any approach to the obsidian gate. They seemed to be daring Farnham and his friends to give a shot anyhow, so they can cut such foolhardy souls down. The first of those would be Grinchard. He have to try or will never have another chance. Of them all, Grinchard was the best with a sword. Then they dove into the mass of piglins, swinging their blade left and right. The brutes gave away before them. Heartened by Grinchard's success, Micro leaped into the fray with him, weaving her sword about herself and formed a shield that none of the piglins dared charge. Weaponless, Farnham stood back and shouted his encouragement to the others. He admired the way they burst into action in less than a moment. Notice, and that were already pushing the piglin invaders back. You got them. Go, go, go. As Farnham's friends drew closer to the obsidian portal, the flowing piglins stopped. It looked like it might be all of them. Hope soared in Farnham's chest, and then came crashing right back down into the dirt. The rush of piglins had only slowed, it turned out, to let an even bigger piglin stomp through the portal. They seemed to be so large they barely fit through the portal, and Farnham's tears strangled in his throat knowing that he saw them. The massive piglin held a large flail in their hand, the biggest Farnham had ever seen, and when they brought the business end of a slamming down on the ground, Farnham could feel the earth shake. Then a gigantic piglin let loose a roaring snort and chilled Farnham's blood. It's a trap, he shouted at his friend. Run! Despite the obvious danger, Grinchard refused to retreat in his face of piglin onslaught. Instead, they forced their way through the smaller piglins until they came face to face with the brutal giant who had just forced their way through the portal. To their credit, Micro followed in Grinchard's wake, never hesitating to make sure they kept the other piglins off the explorer's back. The piglins gave way before her, swinging their blades at her and not offering much of a way of a challenge. At least, that was right up until Grinchard came up against the massive piglin standing between them and the obsidian portal. The moment that happened, the towering brute held up their mighty weapon and let loose an even louder snort than before, and the piglins closed in around the zoo defenders like a vice. The big piglin... Biglin? Farnham thought. His mind was always trying to classify the things he encountered, but brought that massive flare down on top of Grinchard. The explorer might have dodged out of the way, but smaller piglins had pinned in on both sides. The best way he could now hold up their sword and try to parry the incoming blow. Grinchard did just that, holding the weapon's hilt in one hand and under the blade in the other, bracing himself behind the best he could. The golden flail head came hurtling down like a meteor arcing out of the sky, though, and snapped the blade in two. No, Farnham shouted, which did much good as anyone could have expected. The impact knocked Grinchard flat on their back, and they disappeared under the horde of piglins swarming over them. Micro leaped forward then, laying about all her own blade and trying to drive the piglins off Grinchard's fallen form, but the other piglins leaped between them, separating the surrounding each of them. That was the moment that Farnham knew it was all over for them. His friends were some of the best and most experienced fighters they'd ever met, and even they couldn't stand against the many foes. They were outnumbered, overpowered, and flat-out doomed. Stop, he shouted at the top of his lungs. Stop it, we give up, we surrender. He wondered if one of his friends could consider him a coward, or worse yet, a traitor for trying to stop the fight like that. He didn't know or care at that point. He just wanted them to survive, and he had a sword of his own, and somehow knew this was better than any of his friends. He couldn't have done a thing to turn the tide. It would have been like battling an ocean with a spoon. The piglin reader, if that's the gigantic one, Snortle and Farnham cries, they didn't go do a thing to stop the other piglins from utterly overwhelming the others. Grinchard and Micro disappeared beneath the waves of piglin that hauled them down beneath the surface of them, and as if to drown them. Stop it, Farnham shouted. Stop it. The piglins ignored his cries, and Farnham wondered if his friends had really been killed. He charged forward a few steps, and still yelling at the piglins to stop, but the ones in the back turned around and brandished their weapons at him. Farnham realized when the problem was much bigger than just his friends at the zoo. Many of the piglins could destroy the entire town. He had to warn everyone. He spun on his heels and sprinted to the zoo's front gates, shouted the entire way. The piglins are invading! Help! The piglins are invading! Then Farnham got to the front gate. He realized he shut and locked it when he closed the zoo in that evening. As he reached out to undo the lock, the first of the piglins began behind him, caught up with him, and bonked him in the hilt of their axe. Farnham spun around and fell to the ground. He couldn't see anything but angry piglins coming at him. He thought this would end. Mercy, he shouted, flung his arm over his head. Mercy. Chapter 22. Betrayal. By the time Crichton strode through the obsidian portal and into Farnham Zoo, the initial assault was over. The great Bungus had given Ugub the honor of being the first through the portal, leading the attack against the overworld. Then, he had to come through himself. After the vanguard of the best piglin fighters had joined Ugub on the other side, Crichton spent the entire time making sure that each piglin was heading for battle, first drank an entire bottle of the potion that an advisor had whipped up to protect them from the illness of the overworld, would otherwise inflict upon them. They had taken the time to craft chests full of the stuff, and those sat in the stack next to another stack of chests filled with the obsidian. Farnham had traded with them. The piglins guzzled down the whole first chest full of potions quickly, and Crichton had been forced to open a second chest just to make sure that every one of them were properly protected. The potion wouldn't last forever, though, so the advisor had hustled every one of them through the portal as soon as they chugged down their first full dose. The fighters needed to make most of them that they had. Once the last of the now protected piglin warriors dashed into the overworld, Crichton closed up the second chest of potions and followed right after them. Privately, Crichton had hoped that Bungus's warriors wouldn't kill Farnham and his friends. The overworlders had been kind enough to Crichton during all the trading sessions. It seemed a shame to put that such useful trading partners might pay for their lives. Crichton knew better than to try to appeal to Bungus's kindness. The brutal leader didn't have any, which is partly now why they managed to ascend to their current position as leader for the Bastion. Instead, the advisor pointed out that they'd made great strides in learning to communicate with Farnham and that Farnham could have served a perfect guide for them as they explored the overworld. Killing the zookeeper would only slow that process down. Bungus had grudgingly seen the wisdom in that and ordered their warriors to spare Farnham's life. The trouble, of course, was that the Piglins, one overworlder, looked pretty much like any other. Only Crichton would really tell them apart. Bungus couldn't depend on the aggressive battlers to make a decision among their opponents during their initial assault, so instead the others went out for the overworlders inside the zoo would all be spared. How are we supposed to do that? Ugub had wanted to know. When we hit them, they need to go down. They can't have them running off to warn anyone. Bungus had smacked Ugub across the snout for being kind of fool that would dare to question the leader's orders. Bring them down fast as you can. Once they're down, haul them to me. Ugub glared at Bungus as he stood back and answered the piglin leader. We might wind up killing them anyhow. Bungus had raged so hard at them insolence that Ugub had flinched away. So they get killed. This is war, and the overworlders are going to die. But if you kill these ones, you'll be next. That had seemed a settled argument, but Crichton was still worried the piglins would accidentally kill Farnham or one of his friends. That's too easy to make that kind of mistake. Then you're attacking someone with a weapon. And the piglin who followed Bungus tended to be prone to such errors. So Crichton was relieved and perhaps a little surprised when they saw Farnham and his friends had been tossed into one of the simply still empty animal enclosures. One that the advisor had yet to fill with the new creature they were supposed to bring them from the nether. That opened up all sorts of possibilities for them that would otherwise have been cut off permanently. Farnham seemed like he'd been watching Crichton from the moment they arrived in the overworld. When he saw the advisor glancing in his direction, he waved at him, trying to get their attention, rather than ignoring them entirely, which had been Crichton's first impulse. They gave him a further nod of recognition and dismissal. They would talk to him eventually, but they had other things to deal with at the moment. Crichton looked around the zoo and saw that the piglins had masked the zoo's front gate, rattling their weapons with anticipation. Ugub stood at the entrance, blocking the others from leaving quite yet, while the great Bungus loomed over them. Bungus barked out orders of the piglins, instructing them as to how they would overwhelm and defeat the settlement. Following the advice Crichton had often given in the past, Bungus kept orders short and sweet. That made most directions hard to misinterpret and mess up. Although Crichton knew that some of the piglin warriors would figure out brand new ways to screw things up and would surprise them all. This was just the first battle in our new war. The great Bungus' voice was loud that Crichton figured any warlord in the neighboring buildings must have already heard the shouts. If so, they would be ready for the piglins when they stormed out of the place, but it was too late to do anything about that. From here, we will loot the settlement after settlement, land after land. Soon all the riches of the overworld will be ours, and no one will be able to stop us. The piglins let out a raucous cheer in unison, and the great Bungus bared all their teeth at them in approval. Crichton figured that anyone in the settlement who already know the piglins must be aware of it now. Not that knowing about the doom would prevent it. The great Bungus pointed toward the Ugub of the gates and shouted louder ever than cheering. Now unleash the piglins of war, and let the overworld tremble in fear. At that cue, Ugub threw open the gates of the zoo, and stepped aside as the piglin warriors started charging into the settlement. Like a swollen river breaking through the floodgates. The noise grew deafened crescendo for a moment, and drifted off into the settlement proper like a rolling thunder. Well done, Crichton said as they marched up the great Bungus to congratulate him and follow his operation so far. We should have this time looted to the walls in no time. Ugub scoffed at them. We? You should not include yourself in that number, traitor. Traitor, Crichton glared at much bigger piglin. If not for me, none of you would be able to stay here long enough to loot a single building, much less the whole place. Ugub loomed over Crichton, reminding the advisor that the brute could stomp him flat with bare feet. Serve the great Bungus out of fear is not loyalty, it is cowardice. Says the piglin who led a surprise attack against the weakling overworlders. Who's the real coward here? Enough, the great Bungus boomed. We have triumphed today by working together. Together we can loot the whole of the overworld. Or I could put an end to both of you here and now for arguing with each other, then go loot this place by myself. Both Ugub and Creighton allowed Brungus's outburst of cow them. Neither of them was about to apologize to the other for speaking plainly about how they actually felt, but they were wise enough to shut their mouths for now, at least while Bungus was watching over them. Now allow me to enjoy our pillaging in peace. The great Bungus strode out of the zoo after rampaging piglins to the sounds of the clash of weapons and the cries of the fallen, a massive smile carving below their chunky snout. Ugub and Crane watched their leader swagger off into the night-shrouded settlement, looking for doors and bastion and homes to loot. Soon enough, Bungus spotted something that looked like their kind of friend and lumbered off toward it, and head of their golden flail spinning high overhead, and ear-splitting snort risen from their throat. Ugub turned to Crane and glowered at them. Stay here, traitor. The glory of the battle like this is not for the likes of you. Crane knew that the smart thing would do have been to follow Ugub to have the last word before charging into the battle, but they had not resisted needing the brute one last time. If it wasn't for me, it wouldn't be like for you either. Ugub had been halfway through the game when Crane spoke. They stopped dead and they spun around. What did you say? Again, Crane was sure Wild Curse of Action would have apologized there, or at least pretend they said something entirely different instead. They doubled down in their insult. You heard me, or is there nothing but muscle between your ears? Maybe that's one of the side effects of my cure. Ugub stepped forward and backhanded Crane into the ground. With a blink of an eye, as the advisor waited for the star to clear from their eyes, the brute growled at them. You had better earn your pace. The great Bungus may be in charge of me, but I am in charge of everyone else. But defy me and you will pay for it. Crane shook their head to clear it. You need me. Ugub strode with visor bravado. Bah, we need your cure. Yes, but you? Crane leaped to their feet. No one else knows how to make it. That's the problem I can solve myself by beating the secret out of you. You wouldn't dare. The moment that the words left their lips, Crane knew they were wrong. Ugub would not just dare to wrench the formula cure out of them. They would enjoy doing it. Why not? Ugub said. Who's going to stop me? If you hurt me, the great Bungus will make you pay. Ugub chortled the desperation. Bungus is not your friend. Not anymore. Who do you think ordered me to get the cure from you? Crane's eyes grew wide in fear. They looked for someplace safe to run. Ugub stood between them and the gates, but maybe they could make it to Farnham's kitchen where they're out the back door. Just as Crane's feet started to move, Ugub's arms lashed out, and the brute caught the advisor with the scruff of their neck. From there, the brute hauled the hapless advisor up the air, heaving their apes uselessly below them. Put me down, Creighton screeched. Ugub snorted at them. Oh, I'll put you down all right, just not here. With that, Ugub carried Creighton's at arm's length away to the pens in the back of the zoo. Then the brute reached in with the piglins and imprisoned Farnham and his friends. They grabbed a hold of Creighton, put one hand in their neck and the other in the seat of their pants, and hurled them over the top of the fence. Pain shot through Creighton as they landed inside the enclosure and howled in agony and curled up into a ball. Now stay there until this battle's over. We will be time to finish you later. I'm not going to miss out on all this looting. Ugub turned and stormed off, viciously laughing out loud until long after disappeared through the zoo's front gate. Once the pain started to subside, Creighton got to their knees and crawled away from the closure fencing. It ran high over their head and was stunned that Ugub was actually managed to toss it over them. There didn't seem any way to climb over the bars and squeeze them between them. In short, they were trapped, and trapped good. As Creighton tried to figure out how to solve this brand new problem, something cleared the threat behind them. The advisor turned around and see Farnham standing right there. And that's my pages. Alright, well, next time we read, I'm gonna read 163 to 180, 182, which is even short, or is one page longer than today's, but that's okay. Should be easy to read. Anyways, hope you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day. If you like, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.